everyone, it's Holmes from Home Storybooks, and I am here today to do a spotlight on one of my favorite authors of all time, Vivek Shraya. She is a visual artist, a writer, a musician, and she is an assistant writing professor at the University of Calgary and has her own publishing imprint, VS Books, through Arsenal Pulp Press. Her mission is to offer mentorship and publication to young racialized writers. Every time I read a book of hers, it's my new favorite book in her collection. I've read all of her 7 books and love them all, so let's get ready to hear me gush. Talking about Vivek Shraya, writing my thoughts for this video was difficult because her work means so much to me that it's hard to articulate. Looking through her catalogue, there are a few of her books that refer to her using different pronouns, so this is just a note to use she/her pronouns, even if you see different ones in her books. I'm going to talk about the books in the order that I read them, not in order of publication, because it feels right for me to do it that way. So, the first book, Even This Page Is White, is a poetry collection, and it was the first Vivek Shraya book that I read, and from the first poem, White Dreams, I loved her work. She discusses racism, color, what it means to be brown, desire, sexuality, and how, in coveting whiteness, you can lose yourself. I loved that she was able to take complex, difficult issues like privilege, heteronormativity, and her own anti-black racism and condense them into short and emotional poems. I am reminded of one particular quotation. In writing a poem, tell the truth as you know it. Tell your truth. Don't sugar it up. Don't force your poem to be nice or proper or normal or happy if it does not want to be. Remember that poetry is life distilled, and that it is not always nice or proper or normal or happy or smooth or even edged. Gwendolyn Brooks. Her voice is an echo, a soft place to fall, a mirror through which young, trans, and LGBTQ plus people can see their own beauty. It is a counter-narrative to every academic piece about trans people, sexuality, and every one of her books speaks to a future and former self. 4 stars. The next book I read of hers is She of the Mountains, which is a queer love story alongside a series of beautiful lithographic illustrations. Imagine a great love epic stripped of all its finery down to its bare bones, and hold it in your hands like you're trying to drink water. Now take that image and make it queer. This is Vivek Shraya's writing, to me. There are quotations in this book alone that make it worth a 5-star rating. Wearing queer allowed him to shed the sense that he was lying to one group or another. His love, and the person he cherished the most, no longer needed to be kept secret. He could be everything all at once. Ironically, queer meant whole. Shraya's writing comforts me. This book feels so personal. It's almost as if it came from her. She calls out queer culture and how we hold each other up to definitions of what gay is, what queer is, so that we sometimes suffocate each other in our efforts to define ourselves. That is a comfort to me. The way she finally puts into words what I have felt in myself for so long is a comfort to me. Her writing is as fierce as it is tender. It is compassion at its best, love born out of a struggle, empowered with knowledge and distilled down to a science. 5 stars. Next, I'm Afraid of Men. This is Vivek's 3rd book that I read. I used to work for an LGBTQ nonprofit, and part of my job was reading and researching books and journals and other forms of media. It was exhausting. It killed my ability to read for pleasure. I was tired often of reading the same statistics, experiencing the same pain the community experiences in such a volume. I read everything from more recent modern texts to memoirs from the 80s, historical documents, comics, personal anecdotes. Largely, many of the ways we experience queerphobia and transphobia have shifted, but the way they make us feel is the same. Of course, there was so much queer and trans joy too, but I was immersed in these videos, books, journals, and magazines personally, professionally, and emotionally. A labor of love, and it was so wonderful to hear from so many people in my community, but it was a deep and tiring commitment. Then I read this book, and suddenly I was reading again and loving reading again. People always call Vivek Shraya's work raw, and while it has an emotionality all of its own, her level of craft, care, and execution is exceptional. How can I even begin to review this book, to talk about how she examines gender and toxic masculinity, how she relates it to her own experience? Shraya is exceptional because she proves that you cannot critically examine something without speaking to its emotional power. You cannot critically examine the the performative nature of gender without speaking to personal anecdotes. Those anecdotes, those experiences make that concept come to life. As always, lines in this book floor me completely. Queerness is associated with freedom from boundaries. I often quote this on an almost daily basis, and when I tell people where it's from, they nod. Of course, Vivek said something so articulate. I read an exhausting number of queer books for my work, and somehow Vivek Shraya's I'm Afraid of Man triumphed over all of that and gave me back my love of reading. I'll always be grateful for that. And imagine just for a minute that you are a trans youth and that you read this book. Vivek Shraya's power is immeasurable, but her love is too. Again, 5 stars. What I appreciate most about all of Vivek's books is that she really does have a team that takes the time to make sure that the book is beautifully published, whether it's the beautiful images in She of the Mountains or the fact that I'm Afraid of Men is such a gorgeous little hardback. I really feel like her creative team cares about the publication of the book, and that really shows. The next book I read in Vivek's collection is God Loves Hair, which is a series of 20 memoir-style vignettes accompanied by beautiful illustrations by Juliana Neufeld, and they are gorgeous illustrations, just gorgeous. While reading this book, I really asked myself, will I ever dislike anything Vivek Shraya has ever written? Probably not. I feel like this is a really good place to start with Shraya. You can get a feel for her super emotive, powerful writing style, but each story, each vignette is a chance to pause, to take a breath, and to admire some beautiful illustrations. These vignettes all explore the themes of being a racialized person, being a trans youth growing up in a Hindu household in Canada. Quite a few of Vivek's works focus on these powerful vignettes more so than a narrative, and for me, it's really hard to pick one particular vignette that was the most moving, the most powerful. I love them all, and I love them all because I love the feeling that she left me with. Every time I read a book by her, I feel like I've been given a gift. 4 stars. The next book I read by her was The Boy and the Bindi. It's a picture book about a boy who's super curious about his mother's bindi and wants to wear one of his own. The illustrations by Rajni Pereira are wonderful and feel expressive and big and detailed. The style of storytelling is tender, gentle, sweeping, but still, Shraya doesn't sway from that backbone, that foundation of activism that informs all of her work. The boy in The Boy and the Bindi has a dark complexion, and it's celebrated and beloved. This was intentional. This was to tell Southeast Asian people, or kids with very dark skin, that they are beautiful and that they can have books written about them too. 4 stars. After that, I purchased Vivek Shraya's most recent publication, Death Threat, a graphic novel with illustrations by Ness Lee. Death Threat is about a series of death threats that Shraya receives because she is trans and racialized. I picked this up and I thought, I'll just take a look at the art, but I won't read it yet. I'll savor it. And then I sat down and read it in a few hours. Oops. This is haunting. Perhaps even more powerful than the words written themselves on the page are the silences, the gaps, the words left unsaid. The art style is great. It's bold, big lines and shapes, making for an effortless reading experience. The whole story feels unsettling, all the more because it truly happened. Reading it, I thought, I know what type of death threats Shraya will receive. They're the kind of threats that my friends receive all the time. I know the tone. But I was wrong. The threats are not as explosive as I anticipated, and so the whole tone of the piece was transformed. I only wish there were more of it. I wanted more depth, more art, more pages, anything. But did I read it too fast? I've often been a quick reader, and so I wonder what would happen if I reread it and I took my time with it and pored over each page. 4 stars. Let's finish strong with another 5-star read. The last book that I read was What I Love About Being Queer. This is Vivek Shraya's first work. This is a collection of responses to the question, what do you love about being queer? Shraya asked 34 queer and trans artists, activists, authors, and people about what they love about being queer. And it's a compelling question for me. It's a question I've never asked myself. And so with each response, I fell in love with the book even more. What I loved about this book was the sheer variety of responses. We had people saying they love their chosen family, they love their community, they love that their existence is a smack in the face to cisgender, heteronormative, capitalist patriarchy, or they love queer fashion and fisting. I felt whole when I read this, like I found a piece of myself somewhere. I think this book comes on DVD as well, so you can watch the interviews that way. I'd love to do that one day because I think, again, there's something so heartwarming and affirming about seeing everyone together as a collective. It was a joy for me to recognize Tegan from Tegan and Sarah, Catherine Hernandez, who wrote Scarborough, and other queer activists I've seen from the Canadian LGBTQ+ community. What do I love about being queer? I love that we have our own culture, slang, and history. I love my wife. I love that the word queer itself feels endless. I love queer joy. I love that I know what queer joy looks like. I love this book, but maybe a better question to ask would be, what don't I love about being queer? Because like Vivek's work, I love everything. That's it. That's all for this author spotlight discussing one of my favorite authors, Vivek Shraya. Thanks for watching. Bye, everyone.